Anyway, Piyush, I don't know how to start this conversation. Everybody knows everything about you in this country. Um, we're just sharing, right? You started a firm with doing $1 billion a quarter. Now you're $3 billion a quarter. But I think everybody knows why you made, how you
It was
made.
a billion and plus minus 1 billion for the full year.
Okay.
It's different.
It's a different scale. You delivered a business, but we want to talk about how successful you are in DBS as a CEO. I think let's talk about something people have not asked you. There's a remarkable failure in your life as a CEO, as a leader of an entity. Let's get into that before we get into your long journey as a CEO. What was that failure?
Well, I suspect, you're alluding to my .com venture.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think some people do know. I quit banking for a year in 2000 and went and set up a .com, which was nothing to do with finance technically. It was Yahoo lookalike. And this was in March 2000. NASDAQ crashed in April 2000. And the rest is history. I pulled the plug on that venture within 7 or 8 months. Mm-hmm. And in truth, when I went through that process, it was challenging. I'd left a very thriving, flourishing career. And apart from the loss of faith, the loss of self-confidence, I spent the whole year placing people back, 100, 150 people I'd hired rapidly. And then I decided to come back to banking. And as I evaluated my career at that time, it seemed to me that I had lost at least 2-3 years in my career trajectory from taking this diversion. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't easy. It took me some time to get back into the swing and rhythm of things.
And what is that? What exactly we're going through?
Well, actually, I've talked about it before. My first bout with anxiety, I thought it was depression. I was told it was anxiety. Came at that time because I'd made some big moves. I'd taken the family, I'd quit banking, I'd gone to establish a .com. And then at the end of the period, I had no idea where I wanted to go with my life. I was 40 years old. And it took me time, like I said, to find myself. But, Sab, the interesting thing is, in hindsight, when I look back at that episode, it was actually quite defining for me. And defining because it changed me in a couple of quite important ways. One, it changed my appetite to take risk. It increased my appetite to take risk. And it is that because you realize that once you've seen the bottom of the barrel, you get to this thing of how much worse can it get. You've seen the worst.
Yes.
And when you approach life with that mindset, you've really taken some hard knocks, then you're willing to actually step up because it can't get much worse than you've seen already. The second thing it changed for me, though, which was quite profound, when I was working prior to that, like a lot of young people, my whole ambition, my aspirations were driven by career success. Mm-hmm. How do I get promoted? How do I become managing director? How do I move on the fast track? When I came back to banking, it was with the singular realization that I enjoyed banking. That I thought I was good at it, I enjoyed it. And so to the first time I consciously thought about this idea of impact, that this is an area where I can make a difference.
I see.
I make impact. So I came back with it's actually almost from the Gita. Mm-hmm. The idea of coming back with the idea that I will do it because I can make a difference and not so much worry about, what it means for career growth, etc. And I've been able to bring that now to my, thinking about life and work for the last 25 years. This focus on you enjoy the work, you can make a difference, you can make impact, you should do it.
Piyush, I'll ask another personal question here. When you had this huge failure, somebody gave you a job despite that previous bad phase of your life. Is there something to learn from that?
Well, it's a plus and minus. I was working with Citi. Citi didn't want me to go, and so they told me it's a blank check. John Reed said, anytime you want to come back, come back.
So you had a backup plan?
I had a backstop. The backstop is a plus and minus. The plus is it's an easy way out and say, okay, things are not working, let me go back. The minus, is that you go back and you don't hang around. So in hindsight again, I set up actually 4 companies within that umbrella in that period of 7-8 months. 10, 12 years later, 2 of those 4 companies were unicorns.
Oh.
So there's something to be said. If you hung around there for 10, 12, 15 years, you could have spawned a couple of unicorns. And because I had a backstop, I had an easy way to go back and go back and do what I enjoy doing.
And then you decided to join DBS.
Well, many years later.
Many years later.
I came back, continued to work with Citi for another 7 odd years, and joined DBS in 2009.
Was it tough for you to make that switch over?
Actually, not really. I did 2 pieces of homework before. Well, first of all, I had a catalyst because I'd reached a level in Citi in Asia where my next step would have been the US. And on a personal basis, we weren't very keen on relocating to the US. But from a DBS standpoint, I did 2 pieces of due diligence. One was, it's a Temasek-owned company. Do I really get to run the company, or is there some backseat driving? And the second was the culture question. How much of the company is a bureaucracy which is more government-linked?
Yes.
And, will I really be able to help change that? And both pieces of due diligence, I checked very quickly that, if you did a decent job. Well, no, they said basically I figured they'd leave you alone.
Okay.
As long as you knew what you were doing, they'd leave you alone.
I see.
And so actually I found a lot of people ask me this question, was it very difficult to change people, bring people along? And the truth is a resounding no. In fact, I was really surprised by how quickly people got aligned around the agenda that I wanted to set up.
And now, now with DBS, after many years, I think you would have reflected back, I'm sure, last couple of years, your own leadership style. I have a view about your leadership style, which is, I'll hold it a few minutes later, I'll express that. From your perspective, what was your leadership style? I'm sure not everything worked. Something didn't work, people didn't like. You would have figured out that what really works for you. What was that?
So, well, let me put it this way. There's a fundamental thing I think I'm good at, which is, people call it the helicopter thing. So I have a big vision. I can figure and look around corners. I can connect the dots. But also I get into the detail. I'm an execution person. I've always believed that, there's a proverb, right, or what a saying. It says that what leadership is about doing the right things and management is about doing things right. I don't believe that. I do think that in today's world, execution and the capacity to do things right is actually of fundamental importance. What you do will keep changing because the pace of change is remarkable. If you can get your pulse on how to get it done well, you will win. And so that part of my leadership style, which is a big picture view, but rolling up the sleeves and getting down into the weeds in the businesses or the areas that matter, that's been consistent.
But that's, from my perspective, your helicopter lands very quickly.
It lands very quickly.
And the same moment you'll just crash. It's not easy for people to deal with that.
That's true. But on the other hand, that's because I just cut through the noise. My style, therefore, it's always been, I'm very candid.
It may comfort to you, not for the people.
That's true, but my outcomes are decent, right?
Okay.
So I believe. So with me, you get what you see.
Yes.
Right? And so I don't fake it. If I'm not happy, you can see it.
Well, that's
I'm
legendary.
happy, you can see it. But I cut through the bullshit. And I say, this is what we need to do. This is what.
I was holding back my question. Your anger is legendary.
It is.
How many times you got angry with me? You just go berserk. You just.
That's because you bullshit too much.
But I tell within MAS, best way to understand your idea is good, get Piyush angry. So if you are angry, if you are irritated, I think something good about that idea.
I disagree with that. So according to you,
it's a competitive behavior of yours.
So my thing is, I'm a big believer in truth and logic.
Yes.
What triggers my anger if the logic doesn't work.
Okay.
So if the logic is faulty, flawed, it's not this thing. That triggers my anger because I just don't see I have a strong left brain. So
Okay.
I like that. But going back to what's changed in my style as well. So, this again saying, Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And over the years, I came to realize the truth of that. As long as you use analytics, strategy, thinking, you can direct. You can run a command control organization. You can get people to operate in a particular way. But it is limited because the impact is driven, it's corralled by either yourself or a small team of people. If you get the culture story right, then you get an organization where 1,000 flowers can bloom.
Yes.
And so if you can create a culture of entrepreneurship, of risk-taking, of people willing to do things, then it's like magic. And so one big change and evolution in my style over the years was that I started focusing a lot more on culture by design and designing for a culture where people can do things.
I see. But does that style get somebody who's not used to your style, that you're very execution driven, you look for logic. I mean, sometimes in this space there is a bit of a challenge. Logic is not always there. There is some sense of optimism. How do you deal with that?
Well, we take some bets. So for me, it's not, I don't look for all the answers. I look for a way of thinking.
I see.
So if your way of thinking is supportable, I will support it. We're recognizing that, there are probabilities of outcomes. So,
I see.
and all the outcomes won't come through. But if the logic of being able to track the breadcrumbs on how you're thinking, if that doesn't come through and you're sort of shooting from the hip, then I get a little bit more exercise.
But do you give a space to at least see it through, help the person to see it through?
Oh, we've done a lot of things which haven't worked for the company. So we made a lot of mistakes as a company. And some of them I bought into, some I didn't. And I said, okay, we can try, we'll see what happens.
I see.
So yeah, I mean, you do not build a track record like we have with everything happening only in a particular time. So of course, if you look at all the bets we made, we bet on a pure mobile-only bank in India in 2016. That didn't work out. We bet Altio Flip, which did work out. Payla, I was dead set against Payla because I figured that in the world where you have direct debit and you can create a Pay Now equivalent into account.
But we had a disagreement on Pay Now, Payla. Initial, I mean, you just slammed me down when I first bought the Pay Now concept. You don't remember? We had.
I don't know, but my thing is actually it has to be a flip because I've always believed that a wallet is superfluous, is my view.
Yeah.
Right? You should be able to do direct debit from a bank account. The wallet is superfluous. And so I pushed back against my people saying, why would we need to create a wallet? We can do direct debits from an account.
I see.
And, but they persuaded me to try. And in hindsight, it turned out we have actually more Payla customers than Pay Now customers.
Yes.
Even today. So, I mean, I was wrong. They were right. So we do have a situation where people have the capacity to be able to push their ideas.
No, I always thank for that whole discussion when you started Pay Now, because that ultimately benefited everybody. Now, this style of your leadership can affect your work-life balance. You will get very intense in your work. It will affect your own. Or do you think that's not true? You'll enjoy your work, so it doesn't matter?
Yeah, actually, frankly, I'm sort of again blessed. My brain is somewhat compartmentalized. I don't carry work home. And so I have a very broad and eclectic range of interests. My morning I meditate, I do yoga, I do crossword, I do bird watching, I read a lot. And so I've never had a problem with work-life balance in the traditional sense. So I work long days, but I try to keep the weekends to myself. I read very actively and intensively. So
there's something when you reflect back, you think in hindsight, you could have done it differently or thought differently or dealt with that issue differently?
Well, I'm sure there are lots of people. In fact, you think about technology, for example. I went all in on the new technology, modern tech stack, microservice architecture, APIs, etc., and which was fantastic. And I would do it again. But I did not actually think enough and hard enough about the operational complexity that comes with a distributed microservice architecture. So how would you actually focus and dial up a lot more on resiliency while you're pushing the innovation and speed agenda? I would do it differently if I had to do it again as an example.
On your leadership style, any change you like to, or you still believe that's the best way?
Yeah, I'm actually quite comfortable with my leadership style. If you look at, you obviously have a challenge and problem with my leadership style. But I mean, since you spent the whole interview only talking about that one thing, obviously it's something that exercises you more than it exercises me or my people.
No, because I don't understand, because you are a so successful CEO, and I think there are something we to learn from that. I'm just trying to figure out, is that one thing you would think will not do?
Well, I have a short temper. I mean, if I could hold my temper better, I would. But I've worked actively with a lot of my colleagues all the time about trying to do anger management better. But I don't think it's a question of would I choose to do it differently, right?
Yeah.
It's something that's a part of your personality.
No, that's fair. Now, you have been an extremely successful CEO. You are moving on. things change, right? When you are out of the job of a CEO, how do you deal with that transition?
Well, you got to remember, I chose to retire. I didn't
Yes.
have to retire, and I was not asked to retire. My board was keen. I worked for another 5, 7 years. And I chose to retire because I think, planning for your career, you got to have a plan for your life. And to me, when you get to my stage of life, I'm 64, 65, the biggest premium is time. You have only one life and you have so much time. And you got to think about what do you want to do with the time that you have left. And so for me, I've done 40, 45 years of banking and finance. And the big driver is the other things I would like to do with my life. I have a big passion for nature and wildlife. So I do want to devote more effort and space to that. I'm deeply interested in education. So I've taken on some responsibilities around education. And so, yeah, we'll see. I just want to make sure that I leave space to do the other things in my life. So at some stage, I don't look back with regret and say, you know what, I should have done that or didn't get around to doing something.
So when did you decide that enough, I have to do something different?
When I started, I thought was I retire at 60. And then, I got persuaded to hang on till 62. And then along the way, the board asked me if I'd stay on longer. So at end of COVID, I started thinking about this question of, somebody actually framed it to me well. There's a time in your life when you sell time to earn money. But then eventually get to a stage in your life when you're willing to give up money to earn time. That's time's the premium. And so towards the end of COVID, I started thinking about what do I really want to do. So when I'm on my deathbed, what will I not regret?
You have a long way to go.
Yeah, well, so I finally figured 65 is a good age. So I told the board 3 years ago that, 65 is a good time to hang my boots and do different stuff.
And have you some plans in front of you? Some 6 months, 1 year, some timeline?
Well, I've told people I'm going to take it easy for a few months. I want to do a driving holiday through the Himalayas and reconnect with my youth. I used to do a lot of that. For the time being, the things that I'm engaged with is trying to set up the Mandai Wildlife Reserve.
Oh, that's good. So, speak about it a little bit.
Well, what we're trying to do, first of all, there's a conservation agenda to it. We have 40 conservation sites all over Southeast Asia. But there's also a commercial agenda to it. The hope is to try and create a precinct in the north of Singapore, which is sort of like Sentosa, but Sentosa of the north, but architected around wildlife and nature. And so hopefully we'll have ecotourism, camping, trails, etc., to create something over there which links wildlife and nature to the conservation agenda.
And also you are the chairman of SMU.
I also chair SMU, which I love because it gives you the chance to engage with younger people and think about the future of education.
Well, while you are thinking about, there's a word you should carry with you called GFTN.
The GFTN
is just don't think about it. Just keep it near you. So whenever you think we should talk, we can reach out to you.
Well, so I think you're doing the right thing. And giving up a CEO role, you're taking on a CEO role. It's a good thing to do.
No, my CEO is different, CEO, and your is different. So there's a huge difference there. Now, we think about the future, but something I would take you back when you started your life, your career. When you go back and you think, connect the dots, as Steve just says, we always can connect the dots backward. Have you ever thought that when back then that you will have this kind of remarkable end to your career?
Oh, not at all. So frankly, I grew up in a middle-class family. My father was a bureaucrat. And in the Delhi that I grew up in, your aspiration was to join the government. And my aspiration was to become an ambassador and join the foreign service. So I've often called myself an accidental banker. I stumbled into banking only because Citibank offered to send me overseas.
You are too direct. Being an ambassador would have been a very tough job for you. Good, you made the right choice.
So yeah, I actually figured very early that I love banking. It's a good profession. It calls for both a mix of left brain, right brain. It calls for the kinds of things that I'm good at. So no, I didn't think about a priori. But as I look back, it's been a blessing. I think I stumbled on the right career, and frankly, I also stumbled into the right organization. Citibank, where both you and I spent a lot of time, I spent 27, 28 years. It was a great organization. It gave you stretch, it gave you learning, it gave you education. So most of what I learned about banking, about management, I learned there. And for me, getting the platform at DBS in the last 15 years was a godsend to really be able to try and make a difference.
So let's take out work and all this thing. At a human level, as a person, some of the values you think when you reflect back, all of us should carry with us? What you really value that as a person, empathy, kindness? Give us some sense around people.
Well, it's a buzzword, but I think this idea of impact, or today the buzzword is purpose, I think that's quite important. I referred to that as one of my learnings when I turned 40. But the notion about, how do you make a difference? How do you leave something that is going to move the needle? Some time ago, we were trying to define the purpose of DBS, and so we had to do an exercise defining your own purpose. And I sort of skinnied it down to this idea of helping shape tomorrow's world. I do think I can help do that. So I think that's important. You must know yourself. The other thing which I believe in is rootedness. It's very easy to lose yourself and lose a sense of yourself, but rootedness with friends, with people loyalty, these things matter to me. So I'm well connected with everybody who's ever touched and been a part of my life. I think that's equally important.
And your family around you, how important in your life?
Yeah, like everybody. I mean, that's I've got a daughter. They're both bankers, by the way. My daughter, is a banker in the UK. My son's a banker in New York. My wife is a physiotherapist. We're a very close-knit family, but we're also very close-knit extended family. So I spend a lot of time, with the extended family as well.
And as you wrap up your whole journey as a first, you have still a long way to go. You can do other things. Is there something you would like to pick up, which you wish you had done also as part of your long, distinguished career?
Well, my involvement with nature and wildlife, I used to do a lot of it when I was a kid. I used to do bird watching and do that. I gave it up for many years. About 5-7 years ago, I ran into Hank Paulson, who was also a birder. And I told him I'm going to do this when I retire. So he said, don't wait till you retire. You're more impactful in your current job. People will take your call once you retire. Nobody will take your call. So I started, but in truth, I also chair something called BirdLife International, which is one of the larger conservancy organizations based out of Cambridge. But in truth, you don't get enough time.
I see.
And so being able to immerse myself a lot more in the agenda is something I'd like to do.
There's a famous bird watcher look-alike of yours in India,
Salim Ali.
Salim Ali.
Yes.
So how did the inspiration start? Why did you pick this bird watching?
I used to hang around at home in Delhi in our backyard. As there's tons of migratory birds, and we created a small club too.
Oh, I see. So it was a cultivated and that's what to pursue. Now we have a few minutes left. Now, anything you would like to share to the audience, that something they must remember as they think about their life, their career, they must be careful about so that they don't get derailed?
Well, I think that 3 or 4 things. If I look back and say, what are my life lessons, if you will? I do think the life lesson around intent is important. And it sounds like a buzzword, but I found that having knowledge of yourself and understanding your core and what it is that you want to achieve and leave behind, I think that's important. A lot of us don't spend enough time engaging with your core of what you want to do. A second thing which to me is important is this idea of tenacity. Right?
Oh.
So life is about ups and downs, right? And so a lot of people crash and burn because we give up. And the truth is, as long as your trajectory is right, you've got to be prepared to deal with the standard deviations along the way. You'll have up standard deviations and down, and you've got to roll with the punches.
But somebody has to give you a helping hand during that.
So that's true. So, which is the third thing to me. And I think friends are important.
Yes.
And friends in every dimension. I said, I have my friends range from people I grew up with and studied with, to my early career, to my late career. And having a genuine interest in people and friendships, I think helps to build that. Like every leader, I've had to fire and let many people go in my career. I actually take pride in the fact that most of them will still call me for career advice about what to do. But that's because if you figure you're genuinely interested in what people can do, that helps. So having a network of friends and people you can lean on is always very important as well.
And we use the word you fire people, and why do they come to you? They think you are sincere in that.
Yeah, so because oftentimes fire people because you're the wrong fit for the job, or you're not the right person for the company at a point in time. And I'm always honest in my conversations. So as I said, I don't beat
There's no doubt about that.
So I will tell people why I think this is not appropriate for them. and what I think they should be doing, given their skills, what they should be doing, and where I think they might be able to grow and make a difference. And so people respect that, I guess.
And I know we didn't want to talk about DBS, but something you think about DBS when you're going to step out, what will be your expected goal for DBS going from here?
When people ask me about legacy in the context of DBS, we've done a lot of things. Our customer scores are off the charts. We're today one of the top 5 or 10 banks in the world for ROE, price to book. We got all these accolades as the best in the world. The thing I'm actually most pleased about, and I hope stays, is the culture of the company. So we have actually morphed into a company which is actually quite agile. It's agile, it's nimble, it's entrepreneurial, which is why it's at the cutting edge of embracing technology. And it's fairly well advanced in a new way of working. So a horizontal way of working and leveraging technology well. So for me, I'm confident that the way of working has roots, but that's exactly what I'd like to see.
So,
that DBS
from a Susan who's going to take over your job, one wish for her.
Well, frankly, my wish for her is to be successful, obviously. That would be a good thing. Frankly, I wanted to be successful because I always believe that the legacy of any CEO shows up in the 2 years after the CEO is gone. So do you have success after that? So I've been trying to make sure the transition is smooth so she can be even more successful. That would help build my own legacy. But the reality is, going back to, I think change is constant.
Yes.
So it's very hard to create a strategy which is unchanging. 2 years ago, nobody was talking generative AI. It came like this.
Yes.
And today, if it's not part of your strategy, you're dead. So I think change will come at an exponentially increasing rate and pace. In that case, if your strategy needs to keep evolving and pivoting, how do you deal with that? You have to build organizational agility, adaptability, and that comes from a way of working. So if you can master a way of working that does what I call managing horizontally, managing through journeys, we have a flywheel. We work through journeys, we have control towers, we have data-driven, we have experimentation engines, we have 1,600 AI models running through the bank. Now, all of that defines a way of working which allows you to flex and allows you to respond to changing trajectories and changing inputs. And so for me, if Sushant can continue to leverage that, DBS will continue to be successful.
Thank you, Piyush. But before I let you go, please I'll remind a word, GFTN.
GFTN is an acronym, but I will remember it.
Yes. And I think Piyush deserves a standing ovation before we let him go. Why don't you do that?
Thank you.